I'm Anna.
And I'm Shannon.
We've been friends for over a decade and have always enjoyed entertaining each other with our own rather personal stories.
Some hilarious, some embarrassing, some mundane, and some heartbreaking, but always as honest as possible.
I think we afford each other a soft place to land, without judgment and a whole lot of levity.
Please be reminded that this podcast deals with mature topics and is intended for an adult audience. Additionally, we sometimes discuss graphic and disturbing content, which may prove distressing for some of our listeners, in addition to our hosts.
Yes.
Welcome to The Assignment, Episode 2 on exploring our experiences with sobriety. We left off our last episode at the moment that we made the decision to stop drinking. This episode, we deep dive into early sobriety and the changes that quitting drinking have brought into our lives.
We'd also like to point out that we are discussing our own experiences and are not experts or medical doctors. Please consult a professional if you are considering giving up any substances without support. So that was the end of the drinking, and then came the rest.
Yeah.
Then came...
And that's actually the beginning of the journey.
That's right. What was that early sobriety period like for you?
So early sobriety for me, I think you spend the first little bit in sort of suspended shock, you know? I heard somebody recently describe our primate brains as novelty seeking. So our alcoholic brains are also novelty seeking. So, you know, I suppose it can be used as a force for good or a force for evil. And, you know, the particular video I was watching was describing the psychology of billionaires who might, you know, be desirous of a vacation on Epstein Island. You know, without being limited by the boring guardrails of the law, they need to continually amp up the fear factor to feel like they're having a good time, you know? So we often hear about addicts spending a lifetime chasing that first high that they experienced, right? That impossible to duplicate moment where, you know, you feel truly alive for the first time. And, you know, my brain was already structured this way. I had spent 2 decades conditioning it, you know, speeding through each day to get to that moment of reward.
Yeah.
So nothing else mattered, especially at the end. You know, and so in early sobriety, I remember I kind of used that and I flipped the script. So sobriety became my novelty. Being in my right mind was my new high. And so, you know, I focused on all of the new things that I was getting now that I no longer drank. What was I getting out of it? What was the benefit?
Right.
So, you know, the list was long, you know, to be honest. I had better skin. I'm a vain bitch, by the way. Better hair. It was shocking, actually, how much hair regrew. Like, especially those baby hairs, you know, around your, like, kind of forehead and stuff. Yeah, I was wondering. I didn't realize drinking and drugs had made me lose so much hair or had made my hair gray. Yeah. Better sleep. I don't know if you noticed that one.
I did.
Yeah. Better body. I mean, you know, weight loss was suddenly easy. Well, not easy, but it was possible.
Easier.
Better mood. I wasn't cripplingly, you know, in a rage all the time. No horrible hangovers, of course. That was a big one. No morning shame spiral. Didn't miss that. The ability to leave a party whenever I wanted because I could always drive.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. That was possibly the biggest novelty at all. Just the freedom of being able to go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
Yeah, you're right. You never really realized how shackled you were.
Wild, especially in a small town. Yeah.
Yeah, with no public transportation.
Or cabs.
Yeah.
Permission to stay home and eat snacks and watch Netflix whenever I didn't feel like being social, which was often because socializing in early sobriety is dog shit.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's awful. Better relationship with husband, obviously. Remained married, which was, you know, Good. Better at job. Better at keeping in touch with friends and family. I actually, was able to connect with a lot of friends and family that I had lost touch with over the years of my addiction, where I'd kind of fallen off the grid. And then better at budgeting. That was actually terrifying. I decided to put the money that I used to spend on drinking and drugs into a savings account. Do you want to know?
I was going to say, are you going to share? I do want to know.
So in the first year or two that I quit drinking, I had saved $24,000.
Yeah, I believe it. I
lot.
absolutely believe it.
I've spent that money since, though. I've found other things to spend it on. But when I was first sober, I had no idea what else to spend money on. I just didn't have any other things. Like it was food and that,
Pie.
Yeah, I did spend it a lot on pies. Oh man, did I? I'd never found a pie I didn't like in early sobriety. Holy shit.
So that was it. I mean, it was easier to lose weight, but only because you were replacing the calories from wine with cake.
Yeah, cheesecake,
cupcake.
All the cakes.
All the cakes.
They were all delicious.
And they still are.
They are. Yeah. So, I mean, you could review that list of things and say to yourself, wow, that woman just made the easiest decision of her life and was rewarded instantly with a far better life than she could have ever possibly imagined for herself. And then she lived happily ever after at the end.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! No. No. That was early sobriety. And I mean early. Like the first few months, if you're extremely lucky, a year. This is what we veterans refer to as the pink cloud, a lovely sojourn of bliss on the way to actual sobriety. And just as clouds pass, novelty dies, and what you are left with is the gauntlet called recovery. I think the pink cloud is important. It exists for a reason. I'm sorry that not everybody gets a very long or even existent pink cloud, but I think why it's important is that you need hope in order to go on any quest.
Yeah.
Think of Frodo, right? I think you need to believe in what's possible. And when you are in that first, big gasp of relief, and you are free of the tyranny that alcohol has wrought, in your life, I think that is what the pink cloud is. You're like, oh my God, thank God. Mm-hmm. And the shitty thing about that is that it doesn't last. And really what you need to create, what sobriety has to offer you is a lot of grit, a lot of hard work, and a lot of courage. And so, you also really need to get comfortable with discomfort. Yeah. And that's the rub.
Well, that's why I think I said earlier, climbing out is hard, and I think I will always be climbing out. Like, I don't see that as something that ever is really going to end. It's just going to morph and change and be something different in 20 years than it is today.
Right.
I mean, that's my hope. And I have to say, Shannon, watching your journey, giving up booze, was really inspiring for me. And I'm not sure I would have been able to do it as easily without having you as sort of that guide as I went through that process. And you modeled it pretty successfully. And I don't even recall if we talked about it much when I was considering giving it up. And I mean, I know I felt guilty drinking around you for quite a while, but I don't remember if I asked you questions about it.
You were very respectful of my choice.
Okay.
I remember that. Like, you held my choice. You held a space for how difficult it must be. Mm-hmm. And I always remember you were very conscientious about it.
Yeah. Oh, that was nice of me.
Yeah, it was nice of you. Yeah. You're a good friend.
Well, thanks. So are you. I do have a habit of keeping my cards pretty close to my chest. So I suspect, that was some of it as well, not really wanting to let anybody down if it was a decision I wasn't ready to make. And I think then I still thought I could control it.
Right.
It wasn't, because you had stopped it was 5 years that you had not been drinking when I eventually decided to quit. And we remained friends through that entire time.
Right.
I also decided to give up alcohol and nicotine in tandem because clearly I'm insane.
Fucking nuts.
Another little note from my journal. And you know what I also find interesting? So you journal every day.
Yes.
But you never reread it, huh?
Never.
No. I reread mine quite frequently.
No, I don't now. Yeah.
Well, I was rereading this one as we were writing about the podcast because so many of my journal entries centered around my struggle with how I was going to manage this monkey on my back. And so this one was written shortly after I had stopped drinking. And it reads, "This moment marks 67 hours without alcohol and 9 days without nicotine. I worry I should not have undertaken the first hurdle on my own, but as the hours tick by, I'm worrying less and less about the withdrawal being as serious as I feared it might be. I'm anxious, my neck and cranium as if they will simply pop off my shoulders and rocket into space. My thoughts are disjointed and I'm struggling to find words and phrases. I'm lightheaded and I'm light adverse. I've not written in some time. Many things have changed for the better and many, as you might guess, for the worse. It's become apparent that nothing will get better without significant change, and that without significant change, things will only get much worse. I will lose the important things and be left with the worthless. It all feels quite serious to me, like last chance serious."
Last chance serious.
I've always been a fairly dramatic person.
I mean, that paints a picture.
Well, it was a scary time. I don't think I wanted to let anybody know, both physically and emotionally and mentally, how deep I had gotten into this addiction. Even those that knew I had a problem, I don't think I let on that I was physically quite dependent. And I'm still really happy and lucky that I was able to detox at home without any major issues.
Yeah. So I was as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do remember those first, I'd done a lot of reading at the same time. And so I'm, the first 72 hours, let's see how this is going to go. And I wrote that just as I was sort of nearing that, point in time where I thought I would be out of the woods, from anything really bad happening. And it's kind of crazy to think back that you would put yourself through something like that without any kind of help. Simply because your ego won't allow it.
Well, and that's why, the biggest hurdle for most people is asking for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, after that, I meditated a lot. I threw myself into work. Actually, our cat Stevie had died suddenly 2 weeks after that entry, and I cried for weeks after. And I cried for her and the roles that she gave us. And I think for all the loss I was feeling in that moment, I just cried so much that up until very recently, I hadn't cried since then. I went on a whole 3-year non-crying binge.
You cried all those tears out, maybe.
I did.
There was anything left in the ducts.
I did, but I randomly got it back about 4 months ago. So that's been really nice. Incredible. I can cry again. I took a photograph of myself at the 100-day mark of being alcohol-free. And I look back at that photo and I'm struck by how I managed to look simultaneously happy and just devastated.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's almost like you're just in shock.
Right.
Just absolutely starstruck in some way. But, and I think at that time, the reality of sobriety really hadn't sunk in. And slowly, though, over the next couple of years and into the present, I felt like I really had to relearn how to do everything. And this has undeniably been the best and biggest change in my life to date, but I didn't know who I was anymore. And in many ways, I was angry and unhappy. And I had no intentions of going back to drinking, but I also didn't know how to move forward.
Right.
So, I don't think I took another progress photo until the 2-year mark. And when I compare the two, this time I look a little wiser, a little more resigned to accepting things the way they are. And recently, my 3rd-year photo looks legitimately happy.
Yeah.
And at ease.
Yes.
And at peace with myself. And so I put these 3 photographs together in this nice little collage. And it makes me happy to look at it. Yeah, it's this nice little journey from being scared and unsure to being confident and comfortable with that decision.
It's progress.
So, Yeah, and maybe that's how it is. One step forward, two steps back, and you think you've overcome something only to be rudely reminded that you're not quite there yet. And I hear these stories of people with decades of sobriety under their belt relapsing, and I find that so incredibly unsettling. I have no intentions of picking up the bottle again. I mean, how would I get to that place? What would happen for me to go down that road again? But I do think about those things like, what if I lost the people in my life that I want to be the best version of myself for? What if I'm really not doing it just for myself as I believe that I am? And I do find those possibilities terrifying. Like, how quickly could I be right back where I was? Or what worse place could I potentially find myself in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. And I mean, it is really scary to think about going back, especially if you hit rock bottom and you have that moment that is sort of ingrained in your soul of your absolute lowest moment. Like to do the one thing that brings that moment back again is like, it's unthinkable.
Well, and it is, because part of the success and part of the power of getting sober for me was the confidence that I felt in myself and my ability to succeed at something.
Right.
To succeed at something that was really important.
Yeah.
And to tear that all down.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would build myself back up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me too, I mean, I look at all of the good things that have happened in my life as a result of quitting drinking and losing all of those things. Yeah. So that's the big thing when, I do the whole play the tape thing, especially in early sobriety, where you have those real moments of craving or like, it would be really good right now, I play the tape and I think about all of the things that I would lose. And that usually, helps me kind of steer my way out of it.
Yeah. So after hitting rock bottom and the early days of sobriety, your pink cloud was a lot longer than mine. So after that point, you still need to find ways to manage that sobriety and to keep yourself accountable. How did you do that?
Well, I mean, for me, recovery meant feeling stupid for years before starting to feel like myself again. Part of the reason for this is that most alcoholics, and I refer to myself as an alcoholic, but I don't, think that anybody has to refer to themselves that way. But anyway, most alcoholics stop maturing emotionally once they start drinking heavily. So for those of us early adopters, that means that if you are to give up the drink at, say, 35, like I did, and you started drinking at 15, you are basically a 15-year-old walking around in the life of a 35-year-old. Which sounds like the plot of a very bad rom-com, but believe me, it's much worse. A 35-year-old feeling emotions for the first time without drowning them in alcohol is the epitome of the ugliest ugly cry you have ever seen. A Kim Kardashian level ugly cry. Have you ever seen a picture of Kim Kardashian crying?
I have not.
Oh, dude. Anyway, yeah, that was me in early sobriety. A 35-year-old who had never once taken responsibility for my own actions, had never had a credit card, had never paid a power bill on time, had never dusted. You get the general picture here. It was fucking awkward. I felt like I was kind of like, Encino Man, remember? Like Brendan Fraser thawed out and I ended up in like a new world all of a sudden and I had to function in it and I had never functioned before. I would say things needed to happen in stages. Part of this work meant developing new habits and ways of approaching life. So in order to do that, you need to come face to face with how you were approaching life while drinking. And it might seem strange, but most of our behavior during addiction were automatic and completely unconscious. Lying, manipulating, denying responsibility, centering ourselves in every situation. That's a big one. This all somehow felt right to us. To our close friends and partners and loved ones, it was obvious that we were fucked. And to those slightly outside of our closest friends, sort of the acquaintance, work colleagues field of people, they might have been completely unaware that there was even a problem. These are the people that are shocked,
right?
That you advised them that you had quit drinking. These are the people that say, but you didn't have a problem.
You weren't in my pantry.
It's very important not to listen to these people. You spent a lot of good years of your addiction performing for these people specifically. So just because you're a great actor, it does not mean you're not an alcoholic. So I guess for me, stage one was understanding how to be honest, which I had never done. With people, and becoming aware of my problematic ways of handling things, and trying not to do those things anymore. It's a little easier once the hurricane and chaos of drinking, that drinking brought into my life had passed, but you can still do quite a bit of damage just by not letting stuff go. And the act of quitting drinking has the effect of putting your life in slow motion a little bit. While you're drinking, everything in life sort of moves at fast forward pace. You're hurrying through life to get to that reward, to the end of the day or the end of the week. You're sort of wishing your life away. And so when you stop, you're not really wishing life away anymore. So you're having time to sort of examine closely the experience you are having in the moments that pass, which is a novel experience. I also will say that I was sort of shocked by not being in a hurry anymore. I became a little bit more patient. But the other thing is that there was nowhere to go. I was always chasing oblivion, right? I was always trying to put my brain somewhere else to sort of flip the switch, to check out. And so once there was nowhere to check out to anymore, you're left having to face yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you spend an entire lifetime using it as an escape. And then where do you escape to?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the struggle for me, was what replaces this? And I think I've done a pretty good job of not replacing it with anything negative. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
But
because that is the tendency. Like, I know that I did replace it with pie for a while. And I replaced it with clinging on to those novelties of being sober.
I think for me, it was all a novel experience.
Right.
I think I had conversations that felt really surface level and very factual and not terribly deep with a lot of people on the subject as I had stopped drinking. Whereas you may have, stayed accountable by referring to yourself as an alcoholic and really owning that.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to do that.
I like to throw it in people's face too. That
Love
was kind of more my thing. Makes people really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would say something far more soft, like, I don't drink anymore and I feel better now.
Right. I'd be like, I'm a recovering alcoholic. What's up? They'd be like, run.
Well, I love it when people ask the question. You say, well, I don't drink. And, inevitably, sometimes the question comes up and I usually respond with, well, it was just a little problematic for me, or
Right.
something like,
Right.
oh, the pandemic. Oh, it just, So I skirt around it constantly. And I think partly because it has been such an incredibly personal journey for me, that I just feel like it's something I don't need to share with anybody else.
No.
That's for me.
And
We're
yet,
going to have to come back to that one.
and yet, here we are on a podcast.
Here we are telling everybody.
Isn't this freeing?
Oh, it is. So after those initial stages and accountability, what were some of the things that surprised you that you didn't expect about getting sober?
I mean, let me say that the big gifts of sobriety don't come overnight, but fuck, are they ever worth the wait? in my second year of sobriety, once the pink cloud had fully passed and the skies were unnaturally and painfully clear, I had been working on excising some of the reasons behind why I had found myself so far down the dark road of addiction. And it's important to note there's not always a why. I think we like to look for the why. The why is also sometimes bullshit. It's a way for alcohol to convince you to fuck up your life. It's already fucked up, right? I deserve to wreck it. I'm the victim here. Self-pity, for me, was a perfect vehicle for me to tell myself a story that my brain wanted to hear in order to use. It keeps your resentments fully present and accounted for. It whispers in your ear the language of self-justifying your actions that deep down you know are wrong. Unresolved pain is the food that feeds self-pity. So in order to starve out the victim mindset, you have to bring all that shit to the surface.
Messy.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I was skeptical at first. I had been in therapy, on and off since 1997. I got sober in 2016, so long time, right? Close to 30 years. I knew what my pain was. It had caused me to have a fairly serious eating disorder in high school, which led to depression in my early 20s. I was medicated. I remember being 21 and after failing out of university the 48th time, I remember, I found myself sitting at CAMH in Toronto. If anybody doesn't know, that's Canadian Addiction and Mental Health. It's down at college in Spadina. And I felt like my medication wasn't working. And I remember the doctor at CAMH looked at me and said, "The problem is not the medication. The problem is that you are an alcoholic." And I was aghast at this doctor. I scoffed. "If I am an alcoholic," I said, "everybody I know is an alcoholic." And I presented this fact with confidence, but inwardly I was reeling because I was 21. I was not about to give up the one thing that made my life worth living, not for anything. And I remember he looked at me and he said, "Being an alcoholic is like driving an orange car. When you drive an orange car, suddenly you see all the other orange cars on the road." He told me to stop taking the medication immediately as I was destroying my liver. And I remember I went home and hid under the covers of my childhood bed because I was still living with my parents. And I remember I stopped the medication, but definitely did not stop drinking. Not even close. I doubled down. Drinking became my way to self-medicate the pain that I was talking about in therapy. And this was a mixture of, I would say growing up in a bad marriage, followed by divorce, remarriages, trying to integrate into a blended family where I didn't feel like I fit in, and I didn't really fit in anywhere, it seemed. Not with my girlfriends or in my body or at home. My whole existence was a massive effort to try to be something acceptable as opposed to just accepting who I was and being okay with it. So, as my life had careened out of control, I used the stories of my quote unquote childhood trauma to excuse why my life wasn't as perfect as other people's. Now, I was still comparing myself to people, but the pain let me off the hook too, right? And that was kind of a hard thing to admit. And I remember in early sobriety, I used to fantasize about what earth-shattering trauma would need to take place in order to justify me taking that drink. I'm sure many sober people have done this. Like, oh, well, if so-and-so died, maybe I'd have an excuse to
that's what I was
drink
just
a whole
saying
bottle
earlier.
of Chardonnay.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
It's a very dangerous fantasy, and it is a very slippery slope. And that's why it's critical to let go of pain, right? Because pain and resentment are the number one thing that lead people to relapse. So, how do you let go of pain, right? So letting go, and I struggled with this concept. I remember I was in third year of sobriety and I was like, letting go, like it sounds passive. Like releasing a helium balloon into the sky. Lovely. No, It's not that simple. Letting go is more akin to a slow trudge through a swamp of repressed emotions.
Hey, I get it. I'm in year 3. I just learned how to cry again.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy.
It's quite the thing. Yeah. And I mean, you know, for me, telling my story to myself or to others was not really the point. I had been doing that for years. That story was the thing that was justifying all of my addictive behavior, right? The point was to feel it. And the distinction there, it's subtle, but it's very important. So playing show and tell with your pain is not the same as feeling your pain. And I realized that actually I was avoiding feeling it the whole time. So I forced myself to feel it. I delved into the swamp. You know, I thought about young Shannon. I refer to myself in the third person a lot, which I've just noticed since we've been podcasting. I don't know if that's makes me an egomaniac, but anyway. So, you know, I thought about young Shannon. I thought about what she had to go through. You know, this little kid with all these sort of big world problems. You know, I allowed myself to look at her from the perspective of being an adult. I cried a lot. It was not fun. But like any good cry that lasts for months, once you're done crying, you just don't feel that sad anymore. I felt light. I felt unburdened.
Right.
Yeah. You know, the next point is taking responsibility. Right? The exercise of separating childhood Shannon from adult Shannon forced me to see that they actually were different people, right? I think a lot of times we carry our childhood self in our day-to-day functioning adult self, and your childhood self sucks at being an adult. They're different, you know. I suddenly realized that I was at the age that my mother was when she divorced my father, right?
Right.
And that was a realization. You know, I realized that I was the same age as they were. And I thought to myself, well, they were just kids.
Well, it puts it in a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah. Because we always grew up thinking that adults knew everything. And
Right.
they had things figured out.
Right.
I don't think it was until I was in my 30s that I really recognized that, well, that's a load of shit.
Yeah. Like they didn't know what they were doing.
No, they still don't.
No. No, none of us
And
do.
neither do we. Yeah.
It's a complete farce being a grown-up. I guess, you know, I came to this realization and I questioned whether I would have handled that situation any better than they did. And that was kind of like a bolt of lightning directly to my soul. I understood that they did the best that they could.
So you let go.
Yeah.
You let go.
I forgave them. I thought, well, fuck. If I can, you know, if I can fuck up, which I had, you know, obviously I can forgive them. So I sort of all of a sudden stopped running that self-justifying pain script, you know, on auto in the background of my brain.
And was that like a hard stop?
No.
It wasn't like an epiphany that just all of a sudden it went away.
It was a concept of letting go that I had to work on. And I bashed my head against the concept over and over again until one day I all of a sudden got, you know, what they refer to as like a paradigm shift, a shift in perspective.
Right.
And 30 years of therapy, you know, you learn how to, you know, bash concepts into your brain until, you know, over and over again until something finally kind of melts through. So that's sort of what happened to me. It wasn't, it's not an easy process, nor is it simple. And then it's also not simple to kind of look into your own past actions, because not only do you need to let go of pain and hurt towards other people, you got to learn how to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for me, navigating through the thorny bramble bushes of my own fuck ups was not necessarily that easygoing, you know, because I, you know, had a lifetime of not taking responsibility for my own shit, you know, and it was actually cathartic to finally say, yup, that was me. I did that.
Right here.
Right here. My fault. You know, you see those people, like, have you ever watched a Dateline where, like, the obvious murderer is in the interrogation room and there's two detectives that have, like, cornered him, you know, and they've got their elbows on their knees there, and they're kind of, and they're like, come on.
Jim, we know.
We know, Jim. Just, you know, Jim, you'll feel better if you just, you know, and that was me. You know, you have this moment where you just lean back in your chair and you take a deep breath and you're like, fuck it, you're right. I confess. And, you know, if anyone had told me what taking responsibility for my actions was actually like, I feel like I would not have waited so long. You know, this is one of those cases where the anticipation of the thing is a million times worse than the actual thing itself. It was such a relief. You know, it was like a homework assignment that I had been putting off, turning in for a decade, finally done. You procrastinators out there will know what I mean.
Like that time I didn't file my taxes for 10 years. Sorry, CRA. I'm up to speed now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I guess the other thing about taking responsibility is that it's a practice too. Kind of like bashing your head against a concept. You know, you have to, or actually, and I'll talk about it in your terms.
Oh.
It's like meditation.
Oh.
Yeah, better. Where you need to sort of catch yourself when your mind starts to drift.
But in a way that's kind and understanding. As
Calm.
though it's okay to drift away.
It's peaceful.
It's
yeah.
fine.
Accept
Come
that you're
on
going to
back.
drift. It's normal to drift and then sort of careen back to, you know, your mind can easily drift back into old modes of thinking, you know, and so you need to force yourself to think critically about what part you play in the situations, you know. So for me, this was especially difficult. Some people are much better at this part. This was a particularly steep hill for me to climb.
The taking responsibility.
And admitting I was wrong. Yeah.
I'm really good at that, I think.
Yeah, you're amazing at
I'm
that.
incredibly self-deprecating.
Yeah, like
it was
you're-
all me.
Yeah. I was like years into sobriety where I even admitted that I had any character defects, which is insane.
You don't have any.
I have millions. You know, and I guess like some of my long held like pain scripts had made it so that I was always the victim in every situation, you know, and that left me with an inability to see how I was in the wrong. There was, you know, some especially hilarious spousal fights where I would be having a fight with JC and then all of a sudden in my head, I would realize I'm like, you're totally wrong about this fight. Like, he's right and you're wrong. And because I was in the process of doing this work, I would stop the fight. I was like, wait,
Hold up.
hold on. This is my character defect. I am wrong and you are right. I'm like, this fight is over. And like everybody should try doing that once in a spousal fight. It was hilarious to see the look on his face. He was like, what?
Say that again.
I don't understand. So what? Are we just going to go back to normal? Yeah. 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 The other challenge, I would say, in sobriety is redefining fun.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. That's, I think, what people are the most scared of, right? You know, that's the biggest challenge for a recovering alcoholic, or very high on most people's lists. How am I ever going to have fun again?
I think I told you this when I quit drinking. I was really sad about the fact that I was never going to be able to have a bonfire again because I so loved getting drunk and making bonfires. And I thought, there's no way. There's
Yeah.
no way this is ever going to be the same again.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have all of these preconceptions that you're incapable of doing anything.
But I think what you find are things that you never realized would have been fun, and they become
Yeah.
at the top of the list. So getting up in the morning, watching a sunrise, going for a walk,
Yeah.
feeling good when
Yeah.
you wake up. enjoying that first cup of coffee.
There's nothing in the world that's as good as that.
No.
Yeah. I guess, for me, I couldn't imagine ever being able to feel the same feelings, the excitement, the adrenaline that I felt while drinking and using drugs, and I had to go through a sort of grieving process. And I think it's important that, people understand that grieving is normal. Your best friend alcohol has been with you for many, many years, some good years, some really bad years, but they still were your constant companion. And
Troy Dyer.
That's right. So when you lose them, you need to grieve. I remember one of the most painful experiences that I had in early recovery. Actually, you were there. It was the day after that big concert we went to in Halifax.
Oh, the War on Drugs concert, Jazz Fest.
No, it was the rock band.
Def Leppard?
Yes. It was the day after Def Leppard.
Oh.
And we'd all met the next day at a craft brewery before heading back to Clare. And I remember we were sitting on a patio, and I was sitting at the table watching our entire group of friends knocking back flights of beer, getting day drunk. There was no non-alcoholic options at that particular craft brewery. I had nothing in front of me. I didn't know what to do with my hands. And my heart started to sink. I was spiraling. I was embarrassed that I was so upset. I was trying to cover it up so as not to spoil everyone's fun, but my eyes were welling up with tears. And I remember I got up and I got in my car and I left.
Yeah.
I left JC behind.
I drove him home.
It was a 3-hour drive.
We didn't strand him.
I remember I cried for 2/3 of that drive home. Until my throat was raw and my eyes were like 2 overstuffed red pillows.
And it's so hard to articulate in those moments what that loss is, what that sorrow is, but it's there and it's
sorrow. Sorrow is the perfect word for it. Yeah. But then I remember I stopped crying because, like you, I had no tears left. And my mind kind of cleared, and I grasped the concept of acceptance, capital A, acceptance. So I could hate it. I could scream and cry and fight, but I could never change the fact that I would never be able to drink like a normal person, ever. Yeah. That was just not the hand that I was dealt. So, I think we form an attachment to being able to get away from ourselves, to escape our own minds. And substances offer a shortcut to this escape, like no other thing in the human experience. And that attachment is why I figure most people stay in the hell that is drinking for as long as they do. So the grieving process is important and it's very normal, even if it feels completely impossible while it's happening or sorrowful.
Yeah.
And I've been sober, close to 9 years. And I can say
crazy.
now, be 9 years on July 1st. And honestly, I can say now, I rarely ever think about drinking. I rarely find myself being jealous of those who do. The storm does pass. It does. And on the other side of that storm is everything that I always wanted and was afraid to dream that was possible. And the most impossible thing for me that I can't believe that I've gotten out of all of this is just the feeling of being at home in my own skin and just finally liking who I am.
That's a huge one. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a different stage in this process, to the point that after sobriety sounds kind of presumptuous.
Oh, there's no after.
No, it's, but it changes, I think for the longest time, I felt kind of mired in it, mired in being conscious of the fact that I was sober. And I find myself thinking about it a lot less now.
Yeah.
It just becomes less and less important to me that it was something that I had struggled so hard with.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is. But you were such a waypoint for me through all of that that I think it's been nice to kind of have that model to see how positive a change it can be.
Right.
And I think that's made it a lot easier for me. So thank you.
Well, Anna, you are most welcome.
So I really love Shannon's segments on letting go of pain and taking responsibility. And I do remember that day clearly at the craft brewery after the concert, actually. You didn't let on that you were upset. I didn't notice. And
Still an amazing liar.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I had driven the boys home that day, and we stopped at a petting farm. And if you're an adult at a petting zoo without kids, you're probably drunk.
Yeah.
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 So sobriety now. What our lives look like today. You nearly 9 years sober, me just over 3. What does it look like?
I mean, you know what? There's a lot of differences between pre-quitting drinking, post-quitting drinking, that I almost look at them as the end of one life and the beginning of another. Mm-hmm. It's wild to think that just removing that one thing from your life can change things that drastically, and I remember kind of justifying to myself when I did quit drinking, and I was like, you're just taking away one thing. I mean, it's just one thing. Like I tried to kind of minimize it. And I think that that's okay. It was the sort of the carrot that, I was sort of chasing to get me through those first really hard parts. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that it does change your life drastically. And if you were obsessed with alcohol like I was, if it was something that you did every single day of your life, and if it almost destroyed your life, then on the flip side, being sober needs to play a pretty significant role in your post-alcohol life. So for me, I have a community of people that I use as a support system. And a foundation. I obviously, well, not obviously, but I attend a 12-step meeting, which will remain nameless due to some rules around that. But it plays a large role in my recovery. I can say that. And the other big change for me is my routines. I always wanted to keep a daily journal my entire life, but I could never accomplish it because I was a fucking hot mess. So, I have this morning routine now, and routine in general plays a large role in my life where it was non-existent before. So every morning I wake up at 5 a.m., I make my morning coffee, and I write in a journal. And this is one of the biggest gifts. It seems small, but it's one of the biggest gifts of my sober life. My entire life, I wanted to be able to do this, and now I have. I have 9 years full of journals. I have
that you never read.
That I never read. One day when I'm like an old lady, maybe I'll read them.
I hope you do.
Yeah. I guess I just remember being in my 20s and trying to make it as a freelance writer. And I couldn't succeed in it because I was so critical of my writing that I always just basically got in my own way. So, being able to write again, being able to do stuff like this again, that's big. Being hypercritical destroyed my ability to be creative and enjoy and pursue things. Whereas being sober has given me and gifted me the confidence to sort of go after things that I want. And so I'm so insanely grateful for that. How about you?
Well, to that point, being able to reconnect with the things that brought you joy before alcohol brought you joy is such a gift. And I'm still relatively early in sobriety, but I would say the last year specifically has felt much easier and much more freeing in reconnecting with those things that did bring me that joy. So this process, writing, just being open and talking with people instead of feeling closed off and like you have something to hide all the time. It's just very freeing. It really, feels good. And I mean, I think for me, the biggest things are prioritizing myself more. And that speaks to that too. So, I mean, despite still being a bit of a workaholic, I find it easier to make time for myself. And I suppose I'm fiercely protective of that time and mental space that I carve out. But unlike you, I really struggle with routine. I'm not good at it. It might work for 2 weeks for me, and then I've got to shake it up again. I can't get in any kind of religious sort of... Yeah, I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. It's not happening.
More of a 6:30 chick.
Yeah, well, and I think partly it's because my working life has no consistent schedule. It never has. And that makes it challenging to kind of set specific boundaries around the time I do make. But I make progress steadily in my own little way.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at recognizing my fear of most everything for what it is and slowly adapting methods to manage it. I mean, it's always been there. I've always overthought, imagined worst case scenarios in any situation. I mean, I was a pretty nervous child too. I grew up in the middle of the woods and had a healthy, although sometimes alarmist fear of coyotes, bears, forest fires specifically.
I mean, who could blame you?
I know. It was a little much, though. I mean, I was convinced every time my mother ventured out for berry picking, she'd be the unlikely victim of a bear attack. I don't know. Do you remember a movie called The Wilderness Family, maybe from like the late 70s, early 80s? There was a wolf.
Yes.
They called him Scarface. Mm-hmm. He was on the roof of the cabin, especially crafty and bloodthirsty. Anyway, that movie was not helpful to my picturesque home in the woods. Anyway, as somebody who has always been quite impressionable with an overactive imagination, alcohol was one of the things that helped quiet all of that noise for a good portion of my life. So the replacement to that has become meditation, and it has helped me immeasurably with fear. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still there in spades, but I can look at it a little bit more objectively than I used to. So, I mean, despite the positive ramifications of my fear-based thinking, like I'm a very good planner. I'm prepared for most eventualities. 18 backup plans for any given scenario. But like I'm slowly learning to put things in perspective and to calm that kind of fight or flight response in the moment. And like I said before, just look at myself with a little bit more understanding and kindness instead of judgment. So that's it. That's the end of our questions. That's the end of our discussion about our experience with sobriety. That is ever-changing and morphing and growing, and we could probably re-record this in a year, and
it would be different.
It would be different.
Yeah, and I think, it's really good to talk about it. Anytime that you can share your experience, it makes you feel better. And hopefully there's somebody out there that has heard something that has connected with them and helps them. So please, take what you want and leave the rest. And we're grateful that you joined us today to listen.
Thank you.